Welcome to Season 3 of the Empowering Women podcast, a production of the Empowering Women in Industry organization. Together, we will hear from ambitious and inspiring career women as they share their stories of success and overcoming career challenges. I'm Charlie Matthews, founder of Empowering Women, and I am proud to introduce our host, Shannon Bumgarner from Femspired.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Empowering Women podcast. We are in season 3, and this, believe it or not, is episode number 8, and we are in June. Hard to believe that we are almost middle of the way through 2021. And today we have a dynamic speaker and woman, and I'm so excited to introduce Abi to our community. So Abi Olukeye, and I hope I got that semi-right, is an innovative and strategic thinker who has spent her career in STEM fields. So she's already a sister for me. She is passionate about customer-focused solutions, as well as building a platform to increase the number of positive experiences young girls have with STEM early in their learning journey. And more exciting, what I'm excited for her to tell you about today is she is the founder of Smart Girls HQ, a STEM education solutions provider. And it is so exciting, and I know you're going to love her. So hi and welcome, Abi.
Hi, and thank you so much for having me and introducing me to this amazing community. I'm so excited for our conversation today.
And you know where I like to start, which is tell us your story. And I know that you have such an amazing story. So let's just start with your personal STEM story. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so my personal STEM story is somewhat interesting and windy. I actually had very early influences towards STEM, cultural influences towards STEM. I grew up in Lagos, Nigeria, which in that culture, STEM careers were sort of deemed the upward mobile sort of careers, the tried and true path. So being a doctor, being an engineer, those were the careers that your parents were going to encourage you to be on. So very early on, I actually wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be a pediatrician and help kids. And then as I started to get older, I moved here to the States when I was in high school. And so I had to actually get serious about picking a career and I just yes. And then the doctor thing was like, wait a minute, I can't do blood. I can't, it's not going to work out very well. So I had to try to figure out what I wanted to do. But thankfully, I didn't have to do too much because my father in Nigeria was a banker. And when he moved here, he immediately started transitioning his career into IT. And so at the time, yeah, so like certifications used to be so popular, like about this is like 97, all the Microsoft certifications and networking certifications. So he was doing that. So in our home, we had all these computers and stuff that he was, taking apart. And you have to understand, prior to this in Nigeria, the school that I went to, I was lucky enough that we even had a computer lab. So we had a computer lab. We went once a week. And that was the extent of my exposure to computers as a personal item. And even in that lab, we were working on DOS. I remember working on something in like really, really old system.
The green screen, right?
Exactly. And so I didn't have a lot of experiences with computers, except that I knew what they were and I knew what they were useful for, but they weren't a thing that I thought you would have in your home. And so transition to we have many in our home because my dad's doing all these things with them. And not only that, in high school here, I think there was a class I was teaching Microsoft Word, Excel, all that stuff. And I actually remember this moment. I don't think I'll ever forget it because it was the magical STEM moment for me. It was I was working in Microsoft Word, doing homework, and suddenly I just really noticed all the little bits of the UI that made it work. And I'm thinking to myself, somebody put this together. Like somebody decided we should have a menu. Somebody decided you should have this white space. And I was just completely fascinated by the idea that there was an artist and their canvas was this technology. And I wanted to figure that out. that was in my head. I'm like, who does this? Like, what is the job that does that? I'm curious and I want to figure that out. And that's how I learned about computer programming. As I realized that there was
Hmm.
something called programming, and that's what they do. So in high school, I started taking college courses in programming to sort of figure out if I liked it, because if I did, my intention was that I would go to college and study
Sure.
it. And so yeah, that was sort of my path to get into STEM. What was nice for me, my lucky break, I think I may have been discouraged along the way. If it was sort of an interesting thing that happened that ended up being good for me. My guidance counselor in high school, as I was sharing all these discoveries with her, she decided to take it upon herself to um, help me see that girls didn't really like technology. And the first time she mentioned it, it was sort of strange to me. But then she went and got me a research paper to read so that I
Oh
could
no, are
really
you
see.
serious?
Yes,
Oh my
she gave me
goodness.
this research paper. I was
I'm
like,
not
here,
sure
read
that's a
this.
very good guidance counselor, Abby. I'm just saying.
Exactly, guidance. She gave me
Right?
this research paper and she was like, yeah, like girls don't really go down this path. And so for me, I'm still, this is maybe 3 years into being in the States, right? And where, my culture in Nigeria, there are a lot of gender equity issues in that region of the world, but not around, it's sort of in two extremes. You're either from the family where maybe there's not enough resources, so they only the boys go to school, so they have to
Okay.
prioritize, or you're from the other side of it, which is where I was and a lot of my friends, where you're all the kids go to school and your job was to beat everyone, boy or girl. So in my head, there was no boys can do something that girls can't do. So I immediately rebutted to her and said, I don't know. That doesn't make sense to me, that there's something that girls can't do. And she
But
said,
so good for you, Abby. I
yeah,
mean, because I think you're just so blessed to have that background that girls can do anything that
yes,
boys can do,
yeah,
and vice versa, right?
yeah,
There may be things that men want to do that maybe isn't encouraged as well. And
yep,
good for you for speaking up, right? And then taking the
yeah.
chance to use your voice.
Yeah, absolutely. And what made it lucky for me was she was right. I got to college and I was the only female. But in my class and in many of my classes, and I may have been discouraged if she actually hadn't prepared me. I don't think she meant to prepare me that way, but but
So
it ended
maybe
up
she
working
did
for my
guide you
good.
a little bit, right?
She got she got me prepared to be the only, and because I had now read the data. But she also got me prepared to realize that it wasn't an aptitude problem. It wasn't a problem with me or with girls, because what I ended up doing was I was in this magnet program and I had to do a project. So I made my senior year project, creating a curriculum that girls would like. And I got to test it out at a middle school, the sister middle school for the school, which is sort of a full circle moment for what I'm doing right now. But that
Exactly,
was
which
where it all
that
started. Yeah.
when I was sitting here thinking our audience doesn't know that yet, but it
Yeah.
was a complete full circle moment. Wow.
Yeah.
Did you have any, aside from your father, which I love, do you have any other influences, positive ones along the way that encouraged you? Because it is tough to be that only in the room.
Yeah, you know what's so interesting when I think through college, the so I went to Virginia Tech University, which is a great school for STEM.
Go Hokies, right?
Yes, go Hokies. Yes. I remember having supportive um, staff and faculty at the university. There was a strong SWE group, and so there were other
Mm.
women in the. We were in the College of Engineering, so I studied computer science, but we were in the College of Engineering, and
Mm.
so there were other female engineering groups that I could be a part of, and that was really helpful to see. So I would go to those events. But because I was mentally prepared for like the classroom experience where I was the only female, that didn't bother me as much. And because it's college, right? So I go to my class and then I come back to my life where there are tons of, there's tons of diversity in all ways. So I really do. I'm actually grateful for that experience with my guidance counselor, because honestly, it took the shock away, and I didn't need so much validation because I had gotten past that, earlier. I think if I was just thrown into it, I would be like, "What am I doing here? I'm in the wrong place." I need to go find my people. But what I did instead was I found my people in other things and just allowed that to be what it is.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you say that because I didn't really have that prep when I got to school.
Yeah.
And the audience who may not know, I have a chemical engineering degree. And I walked into class and I was like, where are all the girls? Right?
Yeah, it's a rude awakening, isn't it? It's sort of like I must be in the wrong place. Like,
Yeah,
what is
I
going
need
on?
to go find my people, to your point. I
Exactly.
walked into the wrong classroom, right? But I think
Exactly.
my saving grace was my family had really instilled in me, much like your father, to just really own it, and find
Yes.
your way through, right? And find
Yes.
your own personal journey through that. Yep.
It's oh, that's so important, is really having that support system that does that for you. When I got into my career, I found that as well in a lot of the mentors, and I had some managers that were fantastic, some that weren't so fantastic, but then I just leaned into the ones that were pouring into me, and taking the inspiration wherever I could find it.
Yep, absolutely. Well, speaking of journeys, let's like fast forward a little bit and go into your technical career. So you
Yeah,
graduated with your bachelor's of science in computer science, I believe.
yeah,
So
yeah.
what were some of obstacles that you felt like you had to overcome, different or the same, when you got to the workplace?
So I feel like when I got to the workplace, there were two, when I look back, there are two distinct challenges. One was that while I had the language of computer science down, I had spent 4 years studying that, so I felt pretty comfortable. In fact, the reason why I studied computer science was I wanted to know it, and I wanted to be in those rooms where people might think I didn't know it, but I did, and I couldn't be BS. So that was my whole motivation
That's a great
when I
moment,
was
right?
studying it.
There's so many
I
things you
literally
don't get it, and you're sitting there smiling to yourself. Yeah, I really actually
exactly,
get everything you're saying.
exactly. But I went to work for a manufacturing company, and as you know, and that opened up a whole world of other STEM that I was completely unfamiliar with. So I felt like I lacked the language a lot in like when I very early on when I would be in manufacturing environments, and you just see the guys going and talking about this valve and this and this that, and I'm like, what are all these things? And it just seemed like a language that they had down pat, right? And so, even though I knew what I was doing, being able to feel really comfortable in those environments where everybody else seems to be speaking, this language so fluently, and you just feel like, I don't know all these pieces of these machines are, and there's so many machines, and so
And
how
you're
do
making your
I
Google list. That's what I did one time. I
exactly?
literally just started writing stuff down and started like making my Google list.
Yeah. I remember being in a group, like we were doing some sort of, this was even much later in my career, with some sort of leadership training, and we're about innovation, and we're in a small team. And I remember this young guy, he was really, really feeling himself. I can tell, because the assignment that we were to do, we were supposed to discuss something, and he was the expert at that product. And I just asked, like, I can't remember. Maybe let's just say like a manifold valve or something like that. I was like, can you explain how that works? Because we needed to understand that to innovate around it. And he looked and like, and he just looked at the other guy, and he was just like, I don't know how to explain it. And I'm just like, really? You don't know how to explain it, right? So there are a lot of those moments where like the guys feel like, what, I can't, like, it's over you. They almost want to just be like, I don't think I can explain in a way that you would understand, right? I hated those
Interesting.
moments, right? That's sort of the vibe I got, right? Um, and then the second thing that was a challenge along the way was at times just feeling underestimated, right? It's so it goes hand in hand, right? Because I feel like there were different moments in my career where I felt like people just assumed, right? It was sort of
Mm,
this assumption, and they ended up being the best moments because they were blindsided by their blind spots about me. Because then when I showed up with my work, it was sort of like, oh wait, okay. I remember there was a particular role I was in, and it was one that I fought to be created, and once the role got created, obviously, here comes the battle of actually change management and
mm.
getting buy in from this large organization to work with me on something that never existed before. And so it was hard trying to get the teams to all sign up to work with me.
I
I
bet.
finally got one to work with me, and by the time I left the organization to move on to a new role, they had I couldn't get to everyone, and the biggest feedback I got was, "Well, she didn't come work with our team." I was like, "Oh, that
Yeah, but what a learning, right?
exactly right? Yes,
Yeah.
exactly." So that was a compliment to me. Was that what we ended up doing with the teams that we got to. Um, was so well done that they felt neglected, even though, at first, everyone was sort of like, stay away from me
Me,
and
yeah. Please,
just
please
be in
go
your
back to your
corner.
corner, right?
Yeah, yeah. So just a feeling of being underestimated and never really given the benefit of potential, right? I feel like guys get the benefit of potential.
Yeah, and women are
And
based on performance. There's actually, as you
exactly,
know, probably much more than
exactly.
me, there's studies on that. Yep.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, so you brought some positive on that. Any, I guess, lessons you might want to share with our audience that you learned either from that
Yeah.
particular instance?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest there's two. One is your work is always going to speak the loudest, right? Like results always, if you're the only one that can do something a certain way, people are going to put aside whatever it is that whatever their biases are, because they need the results
Mm,
that you can bring to pass. So I always think that way is, if I take away all the personal stuff, if I strip all that away, what is this really about? This needs to happen, and if I can do it the best, they have no choice, right? So I always approach my work in that way, because it helps eliminate a lot of the gray areas where I'm looking for grace. I try to skip that part, because I can't control whether you give me grace or not. I can only
true.
control if my work is undeniable, if what I can offer is strong enough for you to feel like you need it. So I just focus there, and if you then give me grace, even better.
Yep.
All the better. The second I would say is actually picking the moments to stand up for yourself. There was a particular moment where I was working with a colleague, in feeling very underestimated by this colleague for no reason other than I could just tell, like, he didn't know me, he didn't care to know me, he already had his ideas.
And
But
you were
it got to
probably very different from him in a
very
multitude of
different,
ways.
very, very different from him. But I remember the moment where I had it, and I also wasn't the only one he was treating this way. It was
Okay.
all the women on the team. So it irked me to the end of the world that, he was behaving this way. And he had, at one point, scheduled a meeting that he blew off. And I remember walking by, and he was right there in his office. So I walked right in, and I was like, help me understand what your problem is. Like, let's just have a conversation, because I think there's something here, and I don't think we'll work together successfully until we hash it out. And so we had a really great conversation, and he became my work best friend after that. Like,
But it really takes courage to do that,
it
even
really
in
does.
private, right? It really takes
Yes.
a lot of courage to just say,
Yeah.
"Hey, what's your problem? And how
Yes.
can we
Yeah.
move forward?"
Exactly. And it was a lot of, again, assumptions, right? Some of the things he said, it was like, why would you think that? And it was like, well, I just kind of thought. And so just having that conversation cleared the air. And, I joked that it was my work best friend after that. No, but we really were good colleagues,
Hmm.
good friends. It was night and day the next day, like as
Oh,
soon as the
wow.
next day. Yes. We were on the
Interesting.
same page. We were cool, and we stayed friends for a long time. So just picking your moments, where there's some times where it's not worth it. But there's
Hmm.
some times where you really do need to, like, assert yourself, right? They're just finding those moments where it's important for you to assert yourself, one, for the work that you're doing, and in some cases just for yourself, for your own mental health. It's important for you to say, I exist, right? I can't It's not healthy for me to float around this space, like a bubble that could pop anytime. I, for myself, need to assert my presence here in a positive and healthy way. And there are only few moments like that, but it's important for you to take them when they present
Yeah, and
themselves.
knowing that moment and taking it. So,
Yeah.
audience, write that down. If you did not write it down, rewind this and write it down.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, I'm going to transition a bit. In May on our podcast, we highlighted some fantastic work being done by the Girls Code It team. And they're really focused on introducing girls to the world of STEM, IT coding in specific. And really, and why, Abby, I asked you to be here is I really wanted to extend that conversation because it was such a great one to the journey that you're having at Smart Girls HQ. So
Yep.
tell our audience a little your motivation. Why did you choose to step away from your day job and do that? And what is the focus of this organization and its mission?
So, two things. My main motivation was my journey, my own journey as someone in STEM, and my girls. So I have two daughters. They
Mm,
are 9 and 6. And as they were starting to grow up, I spent all of my career within the manufacturing industry. I really enjoyed it. I worked with a lot of fascinating people. Towards the end of my time in corporate, I was working in product management. And
okay.
so I got to the point where I was fascinated actually by the corporate machine. So for everything we say about how slow corporate is, things get done, right? The ball keeps moving, right? We'll have, annual reports that say we grew, right?
Right.
So I was
It's
fascinated
quite the
by that. It's like,
juggernaut, is it
you know
not?
what I mean? I'm
Yeah,
like,
I
we
do.
set
Most of my
goals.
life is in corporate America for our
Yeah.
audience. So I know I'm just shaking my head at Abby. I know
Yeah.
exactly what she means.
Yeah, I'm like we actually, after being part of the annual planning process from a strategic standpoint in the roles that I had towards the end as a leader, I'm thinking, wow, like we don't know the future. We don't have a crystal ball, but we have a rigor around process that allows us to achieve things. And so that was happening while I was also being fascinated by this idea that not much has changed since I left college around gender equity with STEM, right?
It is
So
not, Abby. It's really,
it's
you and I shared
it's
this in our
so
pre-call. It is
crazy.
not. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
it's so crazy. And so I'm thinking, so my girls are going to have my same experience, yet we are doing all these amazing things in corporate and we get them done. Why can't we do the same with
Hmm.
social impact problems? And so in my head, I wanted to I wanted to solve a problem that I was completely obsessed with, that I knew I couldn't get tired of, but with the rigor of how corporations get things done. I
Hmm.
wanted to bring those two things together. And for me personally, I was in a place in my career where I felt like even though I really loved my work and I loved the people I was working with, it really was taking a lot of space in my life. And I wanted to see if I could figure out how to do something that would pour as much into me as I was pouring into it,
Hmm.
and have a little bit more of a blend that way. And so it was attractive for me, like, okay, if I'm going to do that, it wouldn't just be another, I don't want another job. I don't want to solve a commercial problem because I could just stay here and do that.
Sure. Yep.
I was enjoying it. So for me, it had to be a social enterprise, because that's where I would get the payback that warranted
Yep.
all of the energy I was giving out. So
Yep.
that's sort of like what I was motivated by. But the actual problem itself was motivated by the fact that my daughters were showing me that this problem was still very real. I mean, very early, starting about age 3 and 4, they would both, like clockwork, start to talk about things in genderized terms, things that we
Oh,
weren't doing
wow.
in our home.
Really?
Yes, yes. So they would come home and let's do this. Maybe just giving them something to color, and my both of them actually. It's not even one or the other would be like, oh, I don't want any of the blue pencils. I only want the pink ones. Like,
Oh, wow.
or they're just immediately drawn to colors. Like they were very quick to name things as boy things and girl things. And I'm thinking, if at 3 and 4 you are already picking up social cues that says that some things are boys or girl things, and it's so innocent, it makes perfect sense that in a few more years some careers are going to be boy careers and girl
Girl
careers.
careers. Yep.
That sent me into this research spin, and I was reading every single research paper I could find, because I'm thinking, okay, I'm basically applying the 5 why to this problem essentially,
Oh,
and
I
this
love it.
audience
I'm a
will
quality
understand it.
practitioner. Yep. There you go. Five
Yes.
whys.
So I'm like, but why don't we have? And it kept taking me further and further and further down until I got to a couple nuggets of information that set me off. And it was one, By age 12 is when girls start to lean away from STEM compared to their male peers. And then again, it was, well, why? And it was because they hadn't had enough positive, consistent experiences with STEM prior to that. So they were in not necessarily consciously leaning away from STEM most of the time. They were leaning into what they knew and what they had more experience with.
Mm.
And usually that is not STEM. And so then I'm thinking, well, why haven't they had enough positive experiences with STEM? Well, when you're thinking about before age 12, you're thinking about elementary school. This is a time in a child's life where the parents and the guardians and the caregivers have so much influence. And I actually found a data point by the Manufacturing Institute. They've done research with Deloitte that showed that all of us choose our careers with just a few influences, but the biggest is your personal experience. The second is your parents' influence. And then, very, very tiny is like teachers in school. So, if you think about that, and those two candles, your personal experience and parents, made up for like 90%. Well,
Oh my goodness.
when you're under age 12, who drives your personal experiences? Your parents.
Your
So
parents. Yep.
essentially, the for me, if you're thinking about like problem solving and nine step in something, that was the biggest candle. It was just blaring at me.
Yes. So the big candle that was jumping at me when you take these two things together, the personal experiences of a child and their parents, adding up to 90% became sort of the thing that I became obsessed about, because it was clear to me that that audience, the caregiving audience, was neglected when it came to the conversation about STEM and gender equity. It was sort of like, let's put money in schools, let's do more things. But we weren't thinking about the environment that these kids spent a lot of their time in, and how comfortable their parents felt, how comfortable their parents felt doing informal learning with them, or even if their parents understood the potential STEM careers and would encourage their children to pursue them. And that's really where my company was born, is in trying to figure out, how do we serve the environment around the child, so that they can wield their influence in the most positive ways.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, Abby, as you know, when we had our pre-call, I was blown away. I had never thought about it from this perspective. So I want to dig into that a little bit. So I believe a lot of your outreach is focused on the parents or legal guardians of these young girls looking at STEM careers, and I've found that so fascinating. So can you dive a little bit deeper into why this is so critical, and maybe some things that you've experienced or saw along the way?
Yeah. So what makes this so critical is when you look at, it's almost like simple math, but it hits you when you think about it. In STEM, currently, we have 28% of women representing STEM careers. And when you zoom into different areas of STEM, you have some single digits. So, like math, for example, is completely single digit.
Oh, wow.
Physics and computer science is maybe 11%, right? So, you don't have a lot of women, right? So, if you think about that, and if you think about the moms, the other thing we found in our research is that the moms, the main, there's one parent that's usually focused on the education stuff. It tends to be the mom, or whoever's playing that role within the family. And we find that the dads, or whoever's playing that role, tends to maybe just co-sign on it, or they might be the one to drive the kids to a place, but they're not doing the research, they're not putting it together. So if you have, let's just say, 72% of the women who are carrying children or giving birth to children unfamiliar with STEM because they don't have a STEM career, it's so simple to see how, like, they might not feel comfortable doing an engineering project
Right.
with
Or
with
a
their
science
or,
chemistry lab
or a
project, right?
chemistry lab. That's a huge chunk of people that have no context. And not only do they have no context, many of them actually had very negative experiences around
Oh,
STEM.
wow. Well,
So
that
I
makes it
talked
even
to,
worse.
exactly. Exactly. There are like two camps. I actually, just this week, I was talking to a teacher. We're deploying STEM programming at a school district this summer, and we were doing some professional development for the teachers. And this teacher introduced herself as, well, I'm an English language arts teacher, but I'm really a science teacher at heart. And I asked her and she said, there's a long story behind it. I was like, you give me just a little bit. And she said, it has to do with a teacher in college that I could not stand. And I had to figure out something else to do with my life because I knew I would have to take more classes with that teacher.
Oh, that's funny. Oh,
Those are
goodness.
real experiences. I've talked to so many women that have said, first of all, I didn't even know that these STEM careers were an option to me. Like it wasn't something that I even considered, which just validates my earlier point that many times girls are leaning into what they like, not necessarily not choosing STEM. It's just not even on their radar. And so what we've chosen to do with our work and the product we're building is really focus our mission on STEM career literacy. We want to have a clear benchmark to say, okay, if age 12 is the magic age, how do we get a child to age 12 STEM career literate? And that simply
Mm.
means they understand what their options are and they are now informed decision makers and they can decide if this is an area that they want to lean into or not. Both answers are perfectly fine. Our
Yep.
goal is just to get them to STEM career literacy. The bonus that comes with that, though, is even if they choose not to further go down the STEM path as a career, their ability to navigate anything STEM related will pay dividends for them in whatever they choose. So it's sort of a win-win, making sure that all of our kids get to that age where they start to think about selecting a career, having all of the information they need.
And
How
eventually many of them will become parents, right? And then
Exactly,
they'll at least
exactly.
have had that
And they
initial
have
positive
information.
experience.
They
Yep.
have context, exactly, and the cycle
Yep.
just turns round and round. What's important about that equation, though, is we can only get our girls there if we get the buy-in of our parents to support that process. And so for all the work that we do, we actually consider the girls our customer because we're thinking about what's going to get her excited, what kind of projects will she love, and what kind of experiences are going to get her more curious. But we're also thinking about the parent. She probably doesn't have a lot of time. He probably only has 30 minutes. So we're thinking also about the parents to say, what's going to be meaningful, what's going to facilitate bonding so that crosses two boxes. We're all busy, so if it can be fun and bonding and learning, sign me up for that as a busy parent, right? So we're
Yep.
thinking about time, we're thinking about price, we're thinking about all the things that serve the parents also as a customer of our products.
Right, and you're really hitting those two big candlesticks you started out with, which is what is the girl's personal
So the
experience,
experience and the
right?
parents'
And then
influence,
what's the
absolutely.
parent's experience? And then obviously if the parent has more children or was
Yes,
going to have more children, then they are more equipped for the other
yes,
children in their family. Yep.
absolutely.
I
Yep.
love this. I just love it, Abby. It's just a frame I'd never thought about before. And it's so I guess it gives. It just continues to
Yeah.
give,
Yeah.
right? Both to other children as well as maybe even children in their community, right? They just start to
Yes,
give
yes.
back. Yep.
And
I
not
love it.
only and what I also love about it is it gives the parent. So what we forget is, parents are just further along their journey in their lives, but they're not done with it. So parents
True.
are evolving as well. And so as they're learning with their children, their eyes are also being open and their horizon is also being expanded around career pivots that they may not have thought about, but could be adjacent to what they're doing and could lead them down a path that they may
Oh,
not have
good
thought
point.
about before, right? Because all of their worlds are changing as well. I'll never forget, there was a focus group we held maybe 2 years ago now, and the biggest concern the parents had, you could just see, they're like, I feel like I'm already lost with all of the technology as a parent. And so I am nervous that I'm not making sure my child is ready because I know that the world she's going into for sure is going to require these skills. And I already know that I'm deficient at it. So there's already this fear of a lot of parents as
Hmm.
they navigate their own careers that they're
Interesting.
somewhat left behind in terms of digital transformation if they're not already, thrown into it, if they're just on the periphery and they're already thinking about how can I get this certificate, or what extra degree do I need to get? Because think
Mm.
about it, everything has tech added to it. Marketing is now
Yeah.
martech, advertising is
Oh,
ad tech,
yeah, you're right.
health
Everything's
is
got
health
tech in
tech.
it. Yeah,
Exactly.
good point.
Fintech. So if you think of parents as individuals, not just their jobs as guidance, you start to realize that they have their own process too. And so if we can tap into that, it really is a powerful thing, because the parent and the child are now exploring together, and they might find themselves in different places, but just that little bit of time they spend with each other opens up their eyes both to opportunities that they may not have considered.
It's just I love, Abby, what you're doing. So let's talk a little bit about that. What does your organization currently offer, and what's next? Like, what are you thinking about expanding into?
Yes, so this is such a great time for us because we're really in a time of growth. So when we started, we launched with our first product was really directed towards parents. So we have a media property online, Raising Smart Girls, where we provide content and resources for parents, and a newsletter that they would get weekly that would basically curate all the things that they need to know, things that have happened, so that they don't have to worry about missing out on anything. So that product is actually evolving now as it continues to grow. But that was our flagship product. What we're doing, and then right after that, as we started working more and more with parents, they would say, "Hey, I got it. I'm on board 100%. Everything you're saying, what exactly do I do with my child?" Like they wanted a step one, step two, I'm going to check the box sort of curriculum. And that's what led us down the path of building our own curriculum product. So we have a career focused curriculum for girls. They are in the form of physical kits. I have one right here with me. They're called Dear Smart Girl Kits. So the product line
Oh, I
itself
love it.
is called Dear Smart Girl. And we're obviously very intentional. Each box focuses on a specific career.
So for those of
Each
you who are just listening, it says you can be an electrical engineer, and I love it. That is
This one
fantastic.
is you can be an electrical engineer, and it's
Yeah.
very directed to the girl, right? We're writing a love letter to all the little girls across America saying, first of all, we're going to call you what you are, smart. Second of all, we're going to explore a possibility with you in the funnest way possible. This particular box allows them to design and light up a headband using parallel circuits. So the other
I think
day,
I need to do that now because I avoided the electrical genre.
yeah,
Yeah,
because
yeah, I avoided
it's
it.
so intimidating until you
Yep.
do it and you're like, and that's one of the fun things when the girls do this and they literally light up because they can't believe they just did it. But
Right.
one parent and daughter duo just posted a review online on Instagram, and it just made my heart warm up because the little girl was like, "You get to light up a headband, and they don't even do all the hard stuff for you. You have to build all the circuits and all that." I was like, "Oh, yes, 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 exactly."
Yeah, I love it.
But our goal, so what we're doing right now, this was our first kit, and we just threw it out there and said, let's see if people like
Sure.
this. And the response has been amazing. So we're turning it into a subscription product by the end of the year.
Oh,
So we'll
wow. What an
have
undertaking, but
yes,
how much needed,
yeah.
Abby.
And
Yep.
the goal would be that if you truly start with us at sixth grade, 6-year old, we'll send you a kit every other month until your daughter is 12. And she would have explored 35 different careers in a
Oh,
very fun
wow.
way. So that's really our big goal. What's also exciting is that the kit is going to have a digital component. So the times in between the kits, the parents have the opportunity to get personalized recommendations of what else they can do. We just got funded earlier this year by the National Science Foundation, actually backing that digital aspect of
Woohoo!
our
I'm actually
app.
going to clap on that
Yes,
one.
really
That is
excited.
fantastic. Oh, my
Yes.
goodness.
So we have a lot of fun stuff going on. And then the third area where we serve, and one of also, it's all my favorite, but I love being in the classroom and really feeling the energy of the students. But we do work in partnership with schools and districts to fuse in exciting STEM curriculum into what they're already doing. In some cases, we have the opportunity to actually just work with the girls. There's a school in Charlotte that we do that with, and I love it. We get the girls for the whole year. They're fifth grade girls,
Oh,
and
wow.
it allows us to like just lock in that moment before they go into middle school. Really, that age between 11 and 12, and we design a phenomenal year for them and send them off into the world of middle school prepared. In other cases where like right now we're working with a school district on their summer STEM curriculum, and we're just providing the teachers materials and support and the exciting curriculum to go with it. And in other cases, we work with corporations who are mission aligned. We've done some work with Corning, deploying to an audience here in Charlotte. We've
Okay.
done some work with Skookum, which is now Method, and so I love working with companies like that because the audience exists, right? Charlotte area in particular has a lot of Title I schools, and so I love playing matchmaker when it comes to
That's
like
fun.
corporate funders and like some companies like, yes, this is what we are about and this is what we love to do. I have an audience for you, right? And we put
Yep.
them together and we design something fantastic.
And I know, Abby, you didn't hit on this, but I want to hit on this. I think what's also really important, and our mutual friend Titi, who we
Yeah.
interviewed a couple episodes ago, she talked so much, and her passion is around role modeling. And I think, Abby, that's what you're really bringing as well. So when you walk in that classroom or you have that interaction with those girls, they see somebody like them, and they
Yeah.
see and they learn over time about your journey, and they say, you know what, if she can do that, so can I. And I never really
Yes.
understood the power of that until about the last year. And I think it is so powerful, Abby, what you're doing, because through your organization, you're being a role model. And I think that's probably just as important as everything else.
Thank you so much. No, and we're so intentional about that. Our design actually builds that in. So not just my story. It's funny you mentioned that because it just triggered my memory. Because we would at the beginning of the year with the year long program, we asked the girls who they know that's in STEM or in technology, and sometimes they don't know anyone. And then a few weeks in, they're like, "I know Miss Abby." So
Yep.
I'm now their
Yep.
person. But when we design the modules, so they'll have like a whole science module. And for example, for the year before COVID, the science module was a med school simulation, just to give you an idea about how
Oh,
exciting
wow.
these are. Because again, it's all career focused. This is the first time that they're thinking of anything in careers. Prior to anything else in elementary school is all abstract. You'll learn about matter and force, and no
Right.
one's bringing it all together for you. So they're
Yeah.
doing
What am
this
I
med
really
school
going to do with
simulation.
this at some point? Right.
Exactly. But at the end of each module, we do a panel. So we do bring people like TT into the classroom. And what's really great about that, just to validate what you just said about how powerful it is, we also give them leadership coaching by coaches that are just like you. So we had this amazing sponsor coaching right now that gave us coaches for all the girls. And they each got like 30 minutes of coaching after each. So 2 hours total for the school year. And we started to see in those conversations, they bringing up careers of the people that were on on past
Oh, wow.
panels during the year.
Fantastic.
So you just naturally, they're like, yeah, I want to be a vet. And they're like, and you start to peel it back. And it's because we had that vet come talk to them or that dentist come talk to them and they could see it. And we're very intentional about diversity, of making sure that there's a diverse group of people being represented across
Yeah,
the board.
fantastic. Yep. So we're coming close to the end of our time, so I have two more questions for you.
Yep.
How can our audience become involved and support this amazing work that you're doing?
Um, on a personal level, if they have any influence over a young girl, either as a parent, as an aunt, as a grandparent, I would love for them to check out our website at Raising Smart Girls, sign up for our newsletter, buy a kit for girls, stay connected for all of the new things that we're going to be launching later this year. Our goal is really to be their secret weapon and to be their
Right.
partner in this. And I also know that there are a lot of professional women listening to this, and you have influence within your organizations. And a lot of your organizations are STEM focused and really trying to build that pipeline. And I would love to be a partner in that journey in supporting them to do that within whatever
Sure.
community that they want to impact.
Awesome. All right, so I hate it, Abby. I've had a chance to talk to you twice. I'm going to start putting you on my normal calendar of people to talk to. But I do want to give you the opportunity. So where, other than raising smartgirls.com, I think I got that correct.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Where else can people find you in this amazing organization that you're leading?
So I am on LinkedIn as Abi Olukeye, and they can also find Smart Girls HQ, which is the name of my company, on LinkedIn, and follow us there. We're on Instagram as Raising Smart Girls, and on Facebook as well as Raising Smart Girls.
Abby, it has been an absolute pleasure. I thank you so much for the grace of your time and just the wonderful, amazing things that you're doing. Hang in there. And I love, love, love what you're doing. And if I can ever be of help, or anybody in this community can be of help, please reach out. We're there. We want to see you and that organization be super successful.
Thank you so much for having me. This was such a fun conversation.
It was. Thank you so much. Bye, everybody. We will see you next week or next episode. Bye.